We've now gotten a few requests for this from our subscribers, so today we're making taco/burrito bowls. This recipe contains 432 calories per serving, 33 grams of protein, and can be prepped in under 35 minutes. So let's jump in on how to make it. We'll first start with our rice, for which we'll be using the same recipe we used in the Mexican chicken bowls video. We'll be cooking 230 grams of white long grain rice. You may have noticed that actually my rice here was already slightly wet before I added the water. That's because I washed my rice beforehand, which I would highly recommend doing. There's a lot of excess starch on dry, unwashed rice, such that even if you cook the rice really well, it's still going to come out a little clumpy. So by washing this off, this will help maintain the rice's structure. Anyways, once that's done, we'll add in 3 tablespoons of diced cilantro, for which we'll follow that up with the squeeze of half a lime. And then we'll hit that with a teaspoon of salt as well before mixing. Now once that's mixed well, we'll set this off to the side and get on with our beans. To a pan set over medium-low, we're going to start with 50 grams of sliced yellow onion, which we'll hit with a pinch of salt. And then once that's starting to soften, we'll follow that up with 2 tablespoons of diced jalapeños, or about 30 to 40 grams or so, which we'll then let caramelize for a minute. If you want a more raw jalapeno flavor, you can always add these in later on in the caramelization process, or if you're not interested in the extra spice, you're welcome to leave them out as well. Once it's cooked how we want it, we'll add in one 15-ounce can or 425 grams of black beans, for which we'll season with 2 teaspoons of salt. And don't be afraid to add salt here, the beans really need it for their flavor profile. We'll then hit this with the zest of 1 lime, then we'll squeeze in half a lime over the top as well. Finally, I'm going to add in 1 teaspoon of black pepper. Now we'll let this simmer for a few minutes to cook off some of the rawness and let all the flavors get to know each other. Anyways, once we're there, we'll place this off to the side with our rice and then get on with our protein. For today's recipe, I'm using 680 grams of 93.7 ground turkey, which we'll place in an oiled skillet set over medium-high heat. We'll season this very simply with 2 teaspoons of salt, 2 teaspoons of black pepper, 1 teaspoon of cumin, 1 teaspoon of coriander, 1 teaspoon of onion powder, and 1 teaspoon of garlic powder. And once our turkey has gotten a nice crust on it, we'll then go in and mix it all up. And I like to use a potato masher when mixing. I think it's a fairly effective tool for breaking up all the meat into smaller pieces. Now once our turkey is where we want it, I'm going to turn the heat to low and then add in 3 cloves of minced garlic to the center here. Once our garlic is nicely toasted, I'm going to add in 75 grams of red salsa here. And then we'll follow this up with 60 grams of minced chipotle and adobo sauce. We'll mix that up, and then finally I'm going to add a squeeze of half a lime over the top. Now to note, I didn't have enough room in my pan to cook all of my turkey, all 680 grams, so I'm going to cook my protein in 2 batches here, but the recipe numbers I listed are for the entire 680 grams. For instance, for the minced chipotle, I probably used 40 grams in the first batch and then another 20 here in the second. Anyways, once all of our turkey is cooked, we can get on with our final piece of the recipe, which is a quick pico de gallo. Very simply, we'll add 1 Roma tomato or 55 grams, 40 grams of diced red onion, which will then follow up with about 30 grams of very finely chopped jalapeno, a squeeze of half a lime wedge, and then 1 teaspoon of salt. Then we'll give this a good mix, and I decided to leave out the cilantro just because I'm going to add it over the top later, but if easier for you, you can certainly add it in here. The pico is an optional add as it doesn't really change your macros much, so you don't have to make it if you don't feel like it. Alright, now that we have everything ready, we can prep our lunches. The procedure here is very simple. We're going to start with adding in our rice, followed by our black beans, and then our turkey. I'm also going to hit each bowl with 10 grams of shredded Mexican blend cheese, or roughly 50 grams in total. And then finally, we'll layer over the top our pico de gallo and then some diced cilantro. One ingredient I left out of this recipe was shredded lettuce, but that would be a perfectly solid add for this recipe if you wanted some. And if you have the privilege of eating lunch at home, I'd suggest actually leaving the lettuce out and then adding it over the top after you reheat your lunch. And obviously, feel free to make some adjustments to fit your palate. For instance, if you don't like chipotle peppers and adobo, simply add a Mexican-style seasoning of your preference to the turkey instead. Just be careful not to rearrange too much such that it doesn't materially change your macro or caloric profile of the dish. Anyways, here's the recipe and per serving macros, and as I always note, this is listed on our website as well, which is linked in the description. But I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you have any other requests, please let us know. We're happy to make whatever you guys are looking for.